Howdy, partners! Outer space is probably the most popular theme when it comes to retro games, but another one that you see quite often in games is the Old West. That's why I thought it would be fun to take a look at 5 Western-themed games that are sure to give you a rootin'-tootin' good time. Wild West Cowboys of Moo Mesa was a cartoon series from 1992 that I don't remember at all, so don't feel bad if you don't either. And it somehow managed to get a Konami arcade game made, and it has no right being as good as it is. It's a really nice looking game with vibrant colors and great character animations. And more importantly, the gameplay itself is really fun. Due to each level being totally unique, it doesn't get old like some beat-em-ups, or shoot-em-ups in this case, can. Sometimes the game switches from being a side-scrolling shooter to a shmup, which was a fun surprise. At first I thought this was basically gonna be a clone of Sunset Riders, but after the initial starting stage, I realized that this game does have its own vibe. You can choose which character you want to play as, and you can also pick which level you want to play after beating the first stage. There's Moo Montana, Dakota Duke, Buffalo Bill, and the Colorado Kid. Wow, how long did it take to come up with that one? Here, let me try. How about Bullahoma, Saddle Dakota, Buffalo-vania? I could go on all day, but I'd get utterly wiped out. The bosses in this game are all pretty cool, and I'm guessing they're from the TV series. There's even a good variety when it comes to the regular enemies. It's pretty common to find them hiding in a bush or a cactus, which is pretty cartoony in a good way. It reminds me of Wile E. Coyote hiding in a cactus and chariots of fur. My favorite stage has to be the horror level because it's packed with cool things to look at. I like the skeleton cows and green jack-o'-lanterns. And the nod to Psycho with the person in the window. The boss here is an old buzzard who apparently also likes to dig graves. His shovel is also a shotgun, which you gotta admit is pretty rad. This would have been a good addition to my horror levels and non-horror games video if I had known about it then. There's also vibes that give it a TMNT Turtles in Time kind of look when it comes to the sound effects and graphics. Not surprising since it's Konami. For a show that got pretty overlooked with bigger franchises being around at the time, they didn't cheap out with this game like you think they would have. This game has top tier animation and sprite work, which makes it worth playing to this day. In Gunsmoke, I'm sorry, I meant gun.smoke on the NES, you play as Billy Bob running around a bustling mining town called Hicksville, shooting at anyone that comes your way. It's always nice when a shmup has characters instead of spaceships, since spaceships dominate the genre. Dyke is another good one where it's a warrior instead of a ship. Anyway, one button shoots to the left, one to the right, and if you press both together, then you can aim in the middle. It's a game that requires a lot of tapping, so if you don't like that, you can play with the turbo controller like I am for this video. The levels in this game are pretty long, which reminds me of Akari Warriors for NES. But unlike Akari Warriors, this game is actually fun and playable. Not slow and miserable. You encounter what you would expect in a game like this. Bags of money, saloons with swingy doors, and lots of barrels. Why were barrels such a thing? I don't know, but Westerns loved them. Regardless if the wooden barrels were used for grains, pickles, or whatever, the barrel that is important here is the barrel of your gun. And the enemies better watch out, because you can get upgrades for your guns from the townsfolk you meet along the way. You may think this is a one-hit death kind of game, but it's not. If you get a horse, this allows you to take extra hits, which really comes in handy. If the horse starts blinking, then that means he's taken too many hits and is about to die. That bums me out every time, I'm not gonna lie. The most important thing to remember is getting the wanted poster, because you need this in order to fight the boss and beat the level. There's other cool items in this too, like boots which increase speed and a POW block that kills everything on screen, like in Mario 2. Overall, it's an NES classic that I highly recommend, and it's a good port of the arcade original. Now let's talk about Sunset Riders. This was on Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and there was even an arcade version. It's always a debate when it comes to which version is best, so I'll let you guys decide in the comments. I first played this back in 2006 in the arcade, so I'm partial to that one. Anyway, in the Super Nintendo version, you can choose from 4 characters unlike the Genesis version, which only lets you choose between 2. This version also has voices in it, where the Genesis version does not.
Time to pay.
But that being said, the Genesis version does have some elements that are missing in the Super Nintendo version. Like being able to kiss saloon girls for power-ups. Nintendo didn't like that, apparently. You can slide to dodge bullets, which is a really important key to getting through this game. Jumping up and down off of buildings is really fluid, and this also allows you to dodge bullets. If you can learn these techniques, then you'll become a true gunslinger. Some people also think that the Genesis version offers the best gameplay value because you can lock yourself into position, unlike the SNES or arcade versions. So don't totally dismiss the Genesis game. One of the most memorable things about Sunset Riders are the voices. When you come up to a boss, they will say a phrase, and there's just something really funny about how the words sound.
You got me.
Hasta la bye-bye.
The boss fights are awesome and really creative. With the chandelier fight, you have to be continually moving and hopping between the chandelier and the floor to not get killed by the Smith brothers' bombs that they throw at you. It's really hectic. The final boss, Sir Richard Rose, reminds me of a villain from an 80s movie, but I love that he's obviously a corrupt businessman, and the building covered in roses just makes him very memorable. The bulletproof vest moment is perfect, just like so many old movies. Another thing that makes Sunset Riders great is that you can play it co-op, so this is a great one to play with a friend. Both versions have multiplayer. But no matter which version you play, the colors in this game really pop and the graphics are great. It's a super fun side-scrolling shoot-'em-up that's a must-play for any retro gaming fan. If you end up liking this game, you might want to also try out Mystic Warriors, which is very similar gameplay-wise. Now, let's talk about Cowboy Kid on NES. This isn't a super straightforward go right kind of game. It's more of an open world game where you run around all over the place killing everything in sight. You have to talk to people, buy things, and get keys. It's more involved than you think. You meet some odd characters, like this guy who wants to lose weight and moves around frantically. I also like the bad guys in the beginning. They look like they escaped from Double Dragon and forgot to bring their pants. And once you become sheriff, this is when the game really gets going and you can start going after criminals. There's actually a lot of little things that remind me of Zelda in this game. Like the fact that they start you without a weapon and make you go to a store to buy one. You can also get a ladder and a map item. Also, when you go down steps, I swear it makes the same sound as when Link goes down steps into a dungeon. It's not a flawless game, as they make it a little too easy to farm money. You can do this by going in and out of the buildings so you can get unlimited money, making the game kind of pointless. But if you don't do that, it's not a bad game and it's surprisingly pretty fun. And lastly, we have Wild Guns on Super Nintendo. Some people get this confused with Wild Arms and Sunset Riders. Wild Arms is a RPG, while Sunset Riders is, well, Sunset Riders. Anyway, the first thing you'll notice about this game is its awesome graphics and bright and cheerful color palette. You can choose between two characters, Clint or Annie. We'll be playing as Annie today because she's wearing a lot of pink and so am I. It's almost like a single screen arcade game, where you go to one screen and then the next. There's just these single backgrounds, but they are super detailed and nice looking. This game is cool because it takes place in the Wild West, but if the Wild West was infiltrated by angry robots. I love robots, so this game automatically grabs my attention, even if I'm not that great at it. It's not an easy game as the controls take a lot of getting used to. You can shoot, punch, and even use the lasso. The lasso is used to freeze enemies, so that's pretty cool. There's a dodge you can do, which helps a lot. You have to hit Y and B at the same time, kind of like making Mario Run in Super Mario World. You can also throw bombs, which always comes in handy, and you can keep track of them by looking at the purple dots near the health bar. I love all the different kinds of robots in this game, especially the one in the beginning that looks like a giant cowboy mixed with a Star Wars droid. It's also fun to shoot at things in the background, especially inside the saloon. There, you can hit bottles, bar stools, and even a neon sign. Now that I think about it, there are a lot of neon signs in this town. I thought this was supposed to be the Old West. But then again, there are also robots that want you dead, so I guess neon signs are fine too. After the first stage, the game gives you a choice of several different levels to choose from. In the stage called Desolation Canyon, it takes place in a desert with enemies hiding in bushes and even a guy floating on a drone. It kind of looks like an alien inner tube. What is this, tubing? In Ammunition Depot, you start out in what appears to be a construction yard before entering a factory. There's little tanks on a conveyor belt along with SWAT team looking dudes. The boss here is an interesting one. A giant orb with bones and a spine? That's cool, I guess. The armored train level is totally nuts. Not only are you standing on top of a moving train, but there's some Mad Max type shit going on in the background, along with guys on an old-fashioned minecart type thing. There's even guys trying to crawl on the train and birdmen? Total insanity. But for as fun as this stage is, the boss here just doesn't measure up. It's just a guy with a jetpack. That's it. And lastly, in the gold mine stage, you gotta watch out for little stick figure looking guys falling off the mountain and construction workers throwing dynamite. Even the big cowboy robot from the first stage comes back to say hello. Once you're inside the mine, things really heat up and we find my favorite enemy from the game. Look at these little guys dancing in the background. What is going on here? The boss here is a giant robot with turrets coming out of it, and it's pretty tough. I wish it was a giant version of the dancing guys. There's so many Wild West themed games out there. Lone Ranger, Mad Dog McCree, Wild Gunman, and even Barbie Horse Adventures Wild Horse Rescue. But I hope you enjoyed my look at a few here. What other Western themed games do you know about? Let me know in the comments, and thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Bye!